If you read just one book this year, make it this one. Most people spend years making mistakes that could be completely avoided in just 10 minutes. In this video, we're unlocking the core lessons from The Emperor of All Maladies by Siddhartha Mukherjee. A doctor tells a 30-year-old teacher she has a 30% chance of living. That single number, that cold fraction, is the entire history of a 4,000-year war compressed into one sentence. Siddhartha Mukherjee's The Emperor of All Maladies isn't really a biography of a disease. It's a biography of human obsession, arrogance, and the slow, brutal process of learning that you can't fight an enemy you refuse to properly understand. Here's what this book actually teaches you about problem-solving, pride, and progress. Lesson 1. You cannot fix what you cannot measure. For centuries, cancer was untouchable partly because it was so mysterious, but mostly because doctors couldn't see it move, couldn't track it, couldn't prove anything worked or didn't. A tumor buried in the lung or the stomach was invisible until surgery or autopsy revealed it, which meant you could never test a treatment against a shrinking or growing target. Then Sidney Farber, a pathologist stuck in a damp basement laboratory at Children's Hospital in Boston, realized childhood leukemia was fundamentally different from every other cancer. It didn't hide inside an organ. It lived in the blood, out in the open, where a simple draw and a microscope could count the malignant cells directly. That single insight turned cancer from an abstract mystery into a measurable experiment for the first time in history. In December 1947, Farber injected a 2-year-old boy named Robert Sandler with a chemical called aminopterin after every other approach had failed, and watched the boy's exploding white cell count plateau, then drop, then very nearly normalize. For the first time in medical history, a systemic, aggressive cancer had visibly retreated in direct response to a drug. The remission didn't last. Robert relapsed and died within the year, but the demonstration proved something enormous. Cancer could be quantified, tracked, and battled with numbers instead of guesswork. Vague, unmeasurable problems tend to stay unsolved forever, precisely because nobody can prove whether any given attempt is actually working. The moment you find a way to measure something, even imperfectly, you've already started solving it. Lesson 2. Naming a thing wrong keeps you lost. When Rudolf Virchow discovered leukemia in 1847, he refused to invent a fancy theory for it. He simply called it what he saw under the microscope: white blood. That humility cleared space for real understanding to grow later. Compare that to Galen, who blamed cancer on black bile, an invisible fluid nobody could ever find. That one wrong idea trapped medicine for over 1,000 years, and surgeons were told never to cut out tumors, because the bile would just flow back in from elsewhere. Wrong names create wrong strategies, and wrong strategies calcify into dogma that outlives the people who invented them. Lesson 3. Aggression without evidence is just theater. William Halsted built his reputation on the radical mastectomy, removing muscle, collarbone tissue, and lymph nodes, leaving women permanently disfigured, believing more cutting meant more curing. Radical became the gold standard, and conservative surgeons were accused of mistaken kindness. But when Halsted finally tracked his own long-term data, survival had almost nothing to do with how aggressively he operated. It depended entirely on how far the cancer had already spread before he picked up a scalpel. Halsted had the proof in his hands and still couldn't change course, because his identity was built on force equaling control. Effort untested against outcomes is just performance. Lesson 4. Understand the mechanism, not just the symptom. Cancer, the book reveals, is a process, not an object, a cell that hijacked your body's own growth machinery and refuses to stop. It's a clonal disease that evolves in real time, throwing off mutant descendants that survive whatever you throw at them, exactly like bacteria surviving antibiotics. This is Darwinian selection happening inside a human body on a timeline of months. Once scientists grasped that cancer wasn't static but constantly adapting, the whole strategy had to shift from one knockout blow to a sustained, evolving campaign. Lesson 5. Isolation can be an advantage, not just a limitation. Farber succeeded partly because nobody was watching. Cancer research had no funding, no attention, barely any institutional support, and furious pediatricians tried pulling interns off his ward. But that obscurity let him fail quietly and keep working without crushing public expectation. Real breakthroughs often need unglamorous, unwatched failure before they're ready for the spotlight. Lesson 6. The story we tell about a disease shapes how we fight it. Cancer borrowed the crab, carcinos, from Hippocrates, got linked to depression through black bile, and became a metaphor for uncontrolled, monstrous growth itself. Sontag argued these metaphors hurt patients, turning biology into moral judgment. Ancient Egypt had a word for seizures but declared cancer's therapy simply none. Persia's Queen Atossa hid her tumor in secrecy so total it altered a war's outcome. Language isn't decoration on a problem, it's part of the architecture of how the problem gets solved, or doesn't. What ties these lessons together is one uncomfortable thread. Progress against cancer never came from one genius insight. It came from generations willing to be wrong in public, measure instead of guess, and abandon strategies that felt heroic but didn't work. Farber's antiphalates didn't cure leukemia on their own, they proved a drug could touch cancer at all. Halsted's mastectomy didn't cure breast cancer either, however flawless it looked in the operating theater. But each failure, measured honestly and analyzed without ego, built the foundation for what eventually worked decades later. That's the real emperor in this book. Not the disease, not even the scientists chasing it, but the slow discipline of following evidence even when it contradicts everything you've built your career on believing. Mukherjee's long history really isn't a story about a war won in a single decisive battle. If this summary saved you hours of reading and gave you real value, hit the subscribe button right now. Leave a comment below letting us know which book you want to see next. And if you want to keep growing your mind, click the video appearing on your screen right now. See you in the next 10 minutes.